Right, so this is Live with Ryan Wunderlich. This is the 2022 edition. So a couple of things about me. Those of you who already know me get tired of listening to this. Those of you who don't, is that I have 36 years of experience in AutoCAD across multiple industry segments. I'm currently one of our senior support specialists here at IMAGINiT. So if you have a support plan with us and you have a problem, most likely you're going to be talking to me. And if you're not talking to me, that's fine, but I do support most of the products here. I do teach AutoCAD, Civil 3D, InfraWorks, Revit as certified instructors. I've had more than 15 years of CAD management experience, 8 years in cruise ship building, 5 years in civil survey landscape architecture before that. I worked in mechanical, electromechanical, printed circuit board and schematic design, architectural and acoustic design, as well as doing equipment layouts in industrial spaces. So I've kind of run the gamut. As I usually tell people, the only two things I haven't done are aerospace and automotive. So if your questions revolve around those, I'm probably not your best resource. I do have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about some easy ones here. These are just some quick topics, something to kind of prime the pump here, so to speak. So the first thing is we're going to talk about turning on old style toolbars. Those of you who still like them, there's an easy way to get them turned back on. We're going to talk about changing hatch behavior, versus ribbon versus dialog box. I'm still a big fan of the dialog box because everything is there in one glance. I personally like it just because it helps me when I'm doing hatching. And then the command where you can have text or M-text always come in as all capitals. And that is now available in AutoCAD LT as well. And I'll just quickly talk you through that. And then we'll go right into the live Q&A. So as you have questions come up, I will answer them. I will give you a demonstration if it's something I can show you, and then we will continue to go from there. Right. So easy, right? Turning on old style toolbars. So we all live in the ribbon today. As we all remember, release 14 or 2014 was the last one that we actually had the what's called AutoCAD Classic interface. And so those of you that have been porting your settings forward still have it. Those of you who want to get back to something, or at least have a few of them, the toolbars, the basic ones that we really like, there's a way to get them turned back on fairly easy. It's a fairly simple process in both AutoCAD, AutoCAD LT. It is a little more complicated in some of the verticals. So if you are using architecture, MEP, or plant 3D, those are a little more difficult to turn on, but I can definitely show you how we do that. And then with a few clicks and or commands, we can quickly turn on the ones we want. It's actually pretty straightforward. So here's the quick process. Easiest way to do this is that you type in menu bar, you set that to 1, it'll display the old style pull down menu. Locate the tools of the pull down menu, click on that, then click toolbars and locate the AutoCAD or AutoCAD LT one you want to turn on, click it, and it will immediately turn it on. Then once you've got the first toolbar turned on, you can now dock the toolbar, and I recommend docking them. If you cannot move or dock it, make sure that you type in lock UI, change that to 0 so everything's unlocked. Make note of whatever current value you have so that we can change it back later just by typing in lock UI and putting it back. And then you can either go back through the tools and keep adding, or you can simply right mouse click in the gray area and then you'll get a pop-up with remaining toolbars you can turn on. And then now for the complicated ones. These are verticals typically built on top of AutoCAD. Primarily what I'm talking about here is going to be mechanical, architecture, MEP, and plant. Civil 3D and Map 3D both still use the ACAD.CUIX. So that those are usually immediately available. But what we have to do is we have to launch the QE editor, pick your custom workspace. In this case, we click Customize Workspace here. We locate one of the toolbars. It's usually under partials. So if you go down to partial customization, and for mechanical, you have ACAD or ACAD. Click on the toolbars you want. Once you're done, you click the Done button here. Then you click Apply, and then you click OK, and the toolbars get turned on. Pretty easy. Now for architecture, MEP, and plant 3D, the easiest option is to open the QE editor and use the transfer tab to transfer AutoCAD toolbars that you need or want. The other option is you can partial load the AutoCAD CUIX. This is in order to have the basic AutoCAD toolbars available, but if you do use the partial load, there's additional work here as it will load all of the AutoCAD tabs in your ribbon and all of the AutoCAD menus. Usually you have a little cleanup to restore the basic user interface or how you normally like it. And then the last thing you do is you save your workspace after you do come down here to the little gear wheel, save your current workspace, and that makes sure you have it. So with that, we're going to go into a fairly easy demonstration. So here's basic generic AutoCAD. Again, menu bar, I change that to 1. You'll see my menus are up here. I go Tools, Toolbars, AutoCAD, and Layers. This is the one that I typically see most often. For those of us that work in the ribbon, especially in the verticals, it has a lot of context sensitivity. Leaving this one on only is usually where I leave it in most cases, because you know, if you're in Civil 3D or you're in some of the other programs, you click on like a wall and it changes to the wall tab because that's a function of context specific menus, context sensitive ribbon. Sometimes you just want to change what layer it's on. If you keep the little layer pulled down here, you'll see you have immediate access regardless of what's up here. So you don't have to keep clicking back to home and changing the layer here. You can also put it up here in the quick access, but I find that this gets cluttered up here very quickly. I still prefer this. And then again, I can right mouse click. I can turn on other toolbars like draw order, right? Any of the toolbars that you like. And then again, we can just click and drag, put them where we want, close what we don't need, etc. Okay. Piece of cake. So, and then again, when I'm done, I come down here, I'll hit save current as, and I will save this as my drafting and annotation. And now when I come back into, if I close AutoCAD and reopen it, these toolbars will now be here and they will be saved. So if we come over here now to AutoCAD architecture, and again, I can turn on menu bar. This is why this one is so different, is you'll see I have vehicle tracking, raster, and express. I don't actually have any architecture tools up here. So we turn menu bar off. All right, menu bar back to 0. And this is where you have to go into the CUI. And this is how I normally like to do this. So I will actually go to the transfer tab here. I will go ahead and click the open button here. And what I will do is you'll see I'm automatically in my ACA 2022 because I don't have 2023 installed yet. I'll go find my AutoCAD.CUIX. What you're going to see here is now I have toolbars. So I've already dragged the layers one over here, but I can drag any of these other ones. So I can drag the AutoCAD insert, I can draw the AutoCAD text. Oh, put it in the wrong place. Let me delete that. Let me put this where it actually goes, under toolbars, right, UCS. Simply do that and I can apply. And now those toolbars magically appear and they are fully functional because AutoCAD architecture again is AutoCAD core based. So these toolbars still function for everything. So for those of you who want to restore these old school toolbars, this is the way to do it. Any questions on that? Robert, if you change profiles in options, I assume the loaded toolbars will need to be turned on again. That is not necessarily true because when we add these, we're adding them to the CUI. So if I change my workspace to, let's say, 3D Basics, they are not here. Depending on how you have the toolbars set to automatically show or not, sometimes you will have to build them in all profiles. I generally recommend building them in all profiles. The reason why is that whether or not the toolbar is on or off is generally stored in your profile AWS file. It's not generally stored in the registry. So when you make these changes, it's important to make sure you change it for all your workspaces. Yes, well, there are two pieces to this, Beru. It says, can this be made within a profile? If I create a profile with this information. Workspaces, hang on, Robert. I will get with you there. So if I'm changing a workspace, that is one thing. The workspaces here, these are good questions, by the way. So your workspaces are part of your AutoCAD.cuix, right? So here's my AutoCAD.cuix right here. So my workspaces are independent of your profiles. Your profiles just reference which menu you're using and which workspaces you have. So if I were to come into my options here, and I may have a different profile, if I switch to this profile, and we're going to get an error because I'm not mapped for some of this stuff. And it says that my current ribbon's currently not there. If I go back to drafting and annotation, my toolbars are remembered because they're part of the workspace, not the profile. So as long as you have modified the workspace, the profile will not matter as long as that workspace here is available in that profile. Want to make sure that we're all clear on that. Rob, I'm not ignoring you. Rob Jensen asked, why did the sheet set manager stop staying open when I start a new session of AutoCAD? It is set to be docked with save my workspace. The new session opens that workspace, but the sheet set manager is closed. If I change to another space and then go back to my workspace and it's on and docked where I want it. Rob, that might be a more technical issue. I know that 2022 specifically has a problem in remembering certain things when you have custom profiles. Even some out of the box ones have issues. It's especially prevalent in Civil 3D. I like my command line dock down here. And whenever I open Civil 3D, 9 times out of 10, it will remain docked. Sometimes it will pop up and go back to the traditional, or it'll go back to this style, which is not what I want. So I have to constantly come back in and dock it. That's actually a problem with 22 more specifically. So if you're on 22, that may be part of the reason. The other reason is how you're loading your profile or how you're launching. If you're launching from the icon, usually it works. If you're double clicking on a DWG, you may not be set to be grabbing the correct AutoCAD. And so it may not know which profile or workspace you're on. That's more of a technical side that we would have to address. Any other questions on this? All right, so changing hatch behavior, ribbon versus the dialog box. So only open a drawing from AutoCAD. All right, let's talk about this. This is a common thing that I run across all the time. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is, what are you actually set to? So if I come here and I right mouse click on this and I say open with, what I want to know is when I choose another app, what is my default? If your default is set to AutoCAD application, that's what it's going to default to, and it's going to default to the basic AutoCAD.exe. You always want to be using, or you should be using, the AutoCAD DWG launcher. What this does is last in, first out. So what that process means that when you open up Civil 3D 2023 as an example, the next time I double click on a drawing, if Civil 3D was 2023 was the last product I opened, when I double click on a DWG, that is going to be the first product and profile that it defaults to, and will open up using that profile. If the last thing I opened was AutoCAD 2022, that should be what it defaults to and has the correct profile. So let's go back to here real quick. Let's go back to my architecture because we have architecture still open. I'm going to close architecture. That is exactly the same for TrueView as well, Robert. So if you are set to use the AutoCAD DWG launcher and you have DWG TrueView and you open up TrueView last, so that's the last product that you open, it will immediately default to TrueView when you just double click on a DWG. So I'm just going to open this, and what it should do is it's going to bring me to here because I actually opened this after, because this is what I actually had opened. But that AutoCAD DWG launcher, this is common. So only keep one version on your machine. You don't need to do that. Beirut, you can keep any version you want on your machine. And I have multiple versions. I have 2017 all the way through 2023 of AutoCAD. Just know that the last version I double clicked and opened from the icon on the desktop. If I double click on a DWG file, that's what it's going to default to. Alexander, I have installed Autodesk AEC Products 2022, but like my double click always to open Civil 3D, I use the launcher, but sometimes it tricks me opening plain AutoCAD, even though my last session. Yep, when you open from the file manager. So is there a way to modify the registry? No. Long answer, no, there's not an easy way, or that's the short answer. Long way, what you're actually doing when you are launching those products, if you have it defaulted. So for example, I have all of these icons. There is something specific about MEP, architecture, and Civil 3D, why it sometimes does that. And it has to do right here, when I go to properties, is that there is, it's launching the base AutoCAD.exe. What it's not grabbing in some cases is to load the AEC-based DBX. If you do not load the AEC dbase.dbx, you get basic AutoCAD regardless of what product line you're launching or what product is here. You get the basic AutoCAD interface. Usually with Civil 3D, if that's the only thing installed, it usually works fine. If you have multiple products installed, it's important to know that you'll always want to double click the DWG, and you always want to have this associated, DWGs associated to the AutoCAD DWG launcher, and it should be grabbing it. If it's not, you may have another issue. Also, if you've installed additional products after you've done that, sometimes you need to go back and reset it. So those are those things. Does any of these features work with AutoCAD LT for Mac? You should still have, in AutoCAD LT for Mac, you should still have the ability to get toolbars. Not necessarily all of them. Yeah, and those special add-ons have intelligent objects, not just lines and circles. Yes. So if I'm running Civil 3D, there's Civil specific objects in my drawing. If you're running AutoCAD architecture or MEP, you have architecture MEP specific, same with Plant 3D. So I just kind of want to show you that information here. So let's get back to talking about hatch. So changing hatch behavior, ribbon versus dialog. Now, one of the things that I prefer the old style hatch dialog, okay? And I'll show you why when we get to the example here. We can always change it. We can always change that. Basically, you type in HP DLG mode, which stands for hatch pattern dialog mode, change the default from 2 to 1. It's a system variable, so once it's set, you don't need to change it again. Can you show the very first thing opening the layer toolbar? Yeah, let's go back here. So first thing I do is type in menu bar, right? Menu bar of 1. I come up here to tools, toolbars, AutoCAD, and I can turn them on or off from here. And let's get back to what we were talking about, which is this one right here. So when we change it to 0, hatch and gradient dialog box is not displayed for hatch and gradient unless settings is entered at the command prompt. Hatch and gradient dialog box is displayed for hatch and gradient. 2 is the default, so it's going to detect if the ribbon is on or off. If the ribbon is on, it'll default to the ribbon. If the ribbon is off, it will default to the basic. And I'll give you a quick demonstration here. So one of the things I dislike about the hatch, right? So if I just draw a quick rectangle and I start my hatch dialog, what I don't like up here is that sometimes you're not sure whether or not your match properties, your annotative, these things. One of the things that I commonly see that gets people in trouble is that they've come here and they've changed this to use a different layer, and it's not something that you can spot right away, right? So if I change HP DLG mode and I change that to 1. Now when I go to hatch, I will immediately get my old school hatch box. Most of the time until you've actually done a hatch, it will look like this. So you just need to expand this out if you want island detection, things like that. But what I can see immediately here is all the things that matter, whether or not it's associative, whether or not I'm creating separate hatches, whether or not I'm setting behind the boundary, rather than try and figure out from the ribbon what it's actually doing. So again, when I go up to hatch here, right, I can set angles, things like that. I can set origin, I can define origins. I have create separate hatches, outer island boundary. So I have to go through a lot of picks and clicks here to make sure I have everything. The other thing that I dislike about the ribbon is that I have to scroll all the way down here if I have any user specific ones. Whereas in here, when I go to HP DLG mode of 1 and I hatch, now when I come here, I can go here, and if I have custom hatch patterns, I can just come to the custom and I will see them all here. Two different ways of doing the same thing. I prefer this, especially if I have custom hatch patterns, because I find this is more intuitive for me and it gives me more visual cues right off the top. Any questions on that? All right, so text in all caps in AutoCAD and now AutoCAD LT, this was incorporated. Depending on your standards, you usually want all the text in your drawing to be all caps. There is a command to turn that on. Command is text all caps, default is 0, change that to 1, and it will automatically capitalize all text in M text. It will not, and it is a system variable, so once it's set, you don't need to change it again, but it will not work in things like your attribute dialog boxes, anything that is not straight M text or regular text. Depending on what you do, how many of you have started an email and you're yelling at someone, or you all have teams, next thing you know, you're yelling back and forth between people because your caps lock is on, because you're in a drawing. Yeah, D-text is the same as just plain text. Beirut. Right. So we'll just do this as a quick one, right? So you'll see here, if I come in here, I can go text, I can go here, we'll set my height here and rotation here, and I'll just, right? Straight lowercase. So now if I go text all caps and change that to on, or 1 if you're doing it through system variable. Now I can do the same thing, text, specify a height. And again, my caps lock is not on, but now I'm typing all capital letters. So if you're doing a lot of text work, let's say you're writing all of your notes and you're writing all your notes, your general notes, things like that, or you're putting something in that you want to be all text or all caps, and you're going to get delayed. Sometimes I find this works real fast. Any questions on that one? And again, that's straight text or D-text. I can do the same thing in M text. Right, it's all caps. Yes, editing attributes in dialog boxes is still lowercase. That is absolutely right, lower. Shift effects all caps. So if I'm in here and I do M text and I'm holding down my shift key, I click out. If I hold down my shift key, it will force lowercase. Otherwise, it's basically doing caps lock, but it's only doing caps lock in AutoCAD. Does that work if you paste text into the M text editor? Well, that's a good question. Text all caps is on. I'll start my M text from here to here. Let's go grab just a quick piece of notepad document. Sure does. I just copied and pasted from a notepad document that I have, and it automatically converted it all to caps. That will not affect any text you already have in the drawing. Now, as a bonus here, if you have Express tools, you have a little button here. Sorry, let's go to the ribbon, Express tools, and you have under the text, you have this. Oh, it's only, that's interesting. It's modify text, and I can change case. So if I go click here in the Express tools, modify text, change case, I can select which pieces of text I want, and it will let me automatically convert them to sentence, lowercase, uppercase, title case, or toggle case. So that leads into this. So you can type everything in all lowercase, come back in and convert all your text to uppercase in one shot. This does actually work. If I remember correctly, this does work on attributes as well. But I'm pretty sure it does. I haven't tested that in a while. All right. All right, Mary, I'll run through this a little bit slower. So again, the command is text all caps. We want to make sure this is turned on. So now if I put in an M text box and I go from here to here, all I'm doing is typing the letter G. My caps lock on my keyboard is off, and you'll see it's all caps. Now, if I hold down the Shift key and hit the letter F, it will be lowercase. If I hold down the Shift key with text all caps, so you can, it's basically just like having caps lock on, but it's only for text and M text in AutoCAD. Now I wish I had a block that had attributes because I really want to test that theory. Actually, I do. Hang on. All right. Oh, that's right. I'm in the wrong profile. Hang on. Let me go back into my options. Right. So now if I go Control 3, I should have that. All right, we're going to just drop an annotation bubble in here. We're going to see that this is here. We're going to change this to an R. We'll change this to an F. Right. Now let's go see if our Express tools, modify text, change case, uppercase, works in blocks. Express tools is not in AutoCAD LT. So, and I believe the command to launch the command is called tcase, and I don't believe that that works in LT. So Mary, just understand. Let's see, if you type text all caps from the command line and turn it on, will it be on when you get out of AutoCAD and get back in again? This should be, because it's a system variable. So I'm going to close out of my AutoCAD here real quick. Let's go back and reopen AutoCAD 2023 because that's what we were just in. All right, so I closed AutoCAD, started it back up again. I'm gonna have a blank drawing here. All right, I'm just gonna start a blank drawing out of, now let's go MT. That is a system variable. I got out of it, closed AutoCAD, reopened up AutoCAD, my text all caps is still set to on and it's a system variable. So it absolutely is grabbing that as a system variable. Once you set it, you don't have to go back. Is there a spot on the ribbon to do lock in the caps instead of typing? There is no place in the ribbon that they have the text all caps. Michael, just wanted to let you know. All right, you guys have had some great questions. So that's turning on text in all caps. So now we're Q&A time. So submit your questions in the question. Obviously, some of you have been doing that quite well. And basically what we're going to do at this point is it's a free-for-all. Ask your questions. Let's see, if I manually tell a drawing to use a specific version when opening and launching, does that last rule override that setting? That's Kimlin. That's a good question. If you manually tell a drawing to use a specific version, no. So sorry, Kimlin, it took me a minute to realize what you were trying to ask. So if I'm in here, right, and we'll go to my working data. So if I right mouse click here and I say open with, and I choose a version out of here, as opposed to using the AutoCAD DWG launcher, that will not change what my default is, because again, my default is set to the AutoCAD DWG launcher, but I have all of these other ones available to me. So Notepad, TrueView, AutoCAD LT, etc. Let's see. Let's go back up in here. Can you demonstrate using parametrics in a block to change length of an M line or a P line? Laura, that's dynamic block information. We could probably do a webinar on dynamic blocks, because that's going to be more than a 2 or 3 minute conversation. Basically, you have a couple of parameters you need to set when setting up a dynamic block using parametrics. You have to have a base point. You have to have a stretch or lengthen associated to those objects, and there's a couple of bits and pieces that all go to make that work correctly. Can you edit the command alias for text all caps? You can make one. So I could easily, since I happen to have full AutoCAD here, I could go up to Express Tools, and I can go to command aliases here, and I could create a new one like TAC for text all caps, and I could give it the command text all caps. When typing member sizes such as W12, 22, so that's a wide flange 12 by 22 I-beam, Casey. We have lowercase for the X. Can you shift and get the lowercase? Yes. So if I've got text all caps turned on, I can hit shift to get my lowercase. Can you make a custom command for text all caps and put it in your quick access? Absolutely. We could certainly do something along those lines. Depending on where you have your quick access, the first thing you'd need to do is you'd actually need to, well, no, not quick access. Let me think about that. You'd have to create a component for it on a ribbon or a toolbar, and then from there you may be able to put that onto quick access. Oh, and I forgot to put my camera on. Goodness. I got so excited about this. All right, let me just make my camera a little smaller here. I'll move that over here. Right. That could probably be done, Perry. I'd have to think my way through that, because I know you can add here. You can go more commands. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to be able to see the text all caps here. And you'll see that it doesn't show up in the command list because it's a variable. So all commands, let's see if we have text all. Might be able to do it. I would have to think my way through that. We may have to do some extra programming, but I'm pretty sure we could do that. It would just require some extra effort. So Larry, you use the old architectural font similar to the hand font, which we like the look of hand drawn. How to add this font style and where? That's actually an easy question. Let me think about that. There's two ways of handling that, okay? So the first thing would be in your program files, Autodesk, AutoCAD, whatever version you're using, we'll look at 23. In the fonts directory, if you copy it and it's an SHX, it goes here. If it's a true type font, you just simply add true type to your Windows environment. If you are constantly using this, the other option, and this is generally what I see, is we go into our options under files and we add a support file search path. So for example, I have my Lisp search path in here. I could add another one for fonts. I generally don't do that because if you are really curious, since I have years and years of this, let me see, data, fonts. I have accumulated in my life about 1,300 SHX fonts. I pretty much have, I have probably 90% of anything that you will ever run across out there. I have a bunch of stuff that are DGNs from MicroStation. I have some specific ones here. And you are probably using, you're either using Arch SHX, you may be using Arch F. Like I have a whole bunch of these Arch ones, Larry. What I could do is that I could simply point to this directory. Next time I open up AutoCAD, all of these SHX fonts become available. It's actually pretty easy. And let's see, so in 2023 LT, the zoom command won't let you type in E for extents. You must go into the selection to pick extents. You should still have it. I'm in here, I can go zoom, and I should still have E for extents. Now, if you don't see E in your command line, that would be something that you should have it. Zoom is a basic command. That might be something where we need to take a look at why your software doesn't have E for extents. The other thing to be careful of is that if you are a typist like I am, you have minus input search options, and you'll see that we have a delay of 0.3 seconds. I usually set my delay to 1. So I have at least a 1 second delay from the time I start typing to the time it starts giving me information. So if I draw L, it'll wait 1 second before doing this. One of the things I find a lot of time is that if you don't have that delay set high enough, it will actually miss your E for extents because it'll be trying to pull up the zoom. Let's see, Jonathan, is there a setting to keep the last task current instead of changing between a function? I'll need a little more clarification on that, Jonathan. Are these documents available? This PowerPoint will be available to everyone after the webinar is over, and we can get you there. Can you use the layer toolbar in the Civil 3D workspace? Charlie, absolutely. Right, so let's go down to my Civil 3D. Here's my Imperial. We'll wait for that to launch. And Sean, yeah, running AutoCAD in high priority, you can put the /high in there. I usually don't. Most of the laptops you have now are intelligent enough to do it. So we might have to take a look at that. And Mac LT, let's see, the last. So if we start a brand new Civil 3D drawing, right, here's my brand new Civil 3D drawing. Again, the first thing I'm gonna do is menu bar, change that to 1. And I should have, nope, tools did not appear up here, right? I thought I spotted this one the other day. Yep, no toolbars here. So then we have to just go into the gray area, right? So let's minimize this real quick. Usually there's a sidebar over here in the gray area. I can go AutoCAD and I can turn on my layers here. The other option you have is if the ACAD.CUIX is loaded, you can go -toolbar and I can type in a toolbar name. So layers 2, or sorry, what is it? It's and then show, and then there's my layers 2 toolbar. So you can also do it from here, but you have to know the name of the toolbar, and you get there by -toolbar. And then if you don't know what the name is, you can type in all, and it will actually, I can show or hide everything. I generally recommend against that. The only reason why is if you've ever seen this list, it will turn on every toolbar here, plus every toolbar in Civil, plus every toolbar in Express Tools. So just be warned that that is something that can get us into trouble that way. But it can be done, Charlie. And this layer toolbar works just like it does in AutoCAD. And the reason why is that Civil 3D is built on top of AutoCAD. So I can change my here. And if I'm in my home tab, you'll see it changes it here. Now let's see. Let's see, highlight text and right click to change text. You're talking, we come in here, let me move this down here. So we're talking, click on this, right mouse click, mText edit, draw order group. These are all of your regular pieces in here for what's available that way with a right mouse click. You'll see that I don't have the ability here to change the text to all caps. We could modify the CUI menu so that this pop-up does have change text, or tcase, sorry, the command is tcase. Is there any way to have the various AutoCAD application launcher show what version they're launching? No, that would be a really nice wish list item so that when I double click on a drawing, that's what it's going to show me. What I generally find is that if I'm in here and I open up working data, and this is just going to say it's an AutoCAD drawing. Hang on just one second. And it usually says AutoCAD drawing. What I've found sometimes is that it will actually show me what version it thinks I'm in. I've seen this where I go into class files. I'm trying to think of where I saw this. These just say AutoCAD drawing because that's the last one it thinks I opened, but I'll actually see this switch to Civil 3D 2022, or will show me as a type. Trying to remember which one it was. There's a field I can turn on in here and I can actually see what program it was, and I've seen it in a couple of places. I will have to find that. If I can find that, I will let you know. And then it will actually show up here. It will say it's an AutoCAD drawing, and it will actually tell me what version it was or what program it thinks was the last one that opened it. All right. Sorry, didn't mean to get too distracted with that. All right, what's the best way to export settings so they can be imported when upgrading to the latest version of AutoCAD? Rich, that is a $1 million question. What settings are you talking about specifically? Because there's a couple of ways to handle this. If you're just talking about workspace, you know, what you have set up here with toolbars and things like that, the easiest thing to do is go into the CUI editor, go to the transfer tab, and here's my AutoCAD Classic that I've had for years. I basically click and drag this over to here. I save this file. I open up the new version. I go back to the transfer tab. I open here, this Classic. I drag it over to my workspace. I'm done. That's strictly workspace. Now, if you're talking about the other settings, like your file paths and things like that, usually what I recommend is that if it's a global change, in other words, everyone in your company has the same settings, it's usually best to set up one machine with the correct settings, then use the argument file, right, from options, excuse me, right? We have our profile, we export out the profile we want, things like that. If it's individualized, in other words, individuals have their own stuff in here, that's where it becomes a lot more difficult, and that's where we would need to have a bigger discussion. Those are the basic things. If you're running full AutoCAD in Express Tools, you can also harvest system variables, right? So this is a great one here. I can hit Save All. It's going to save this as an SVF file, which is sysvar files. I can go to any other version of AutoCAD, and I can click Read, grab that sysvar, and it will grab all the system variables and apply them to my current AutoCAD. Let's see. Is there a Lisp routine to edit nested blocks? Jim Hogston, Lisp routine to edit nested blocks. What specifically are you trying to edit in the nested block? Generally, if you have nested blocks, that is going to be a problem if you're trying to edit line work or if you're trying to do some things. There are some methods. Usually you have to do a block edit, figure out what block it is, and then close out of that block edit and actually pick from the name. Yep, Arch SHX. So that's exactly what I'd be doing, Larry, is just pointing everyone to a common location where we have basically where we have our information. You keep your stored text files. Sorry, let me go back to AutoCAD. Let's see, with the new block insert dialog, how can you control the extra files and block metadata? It makes some block libraries we want on a shared drive, some are per user. Is there information out there on how to control that? Oh, you're talking about the block palette, Von Kelso. Yeah, the block metadata gets created on local machines. One of the things I commonly find is that I find that if you end up with an invalid block definition, it's going to crash your CAD every time you open it up. And then you have to do, it's block MRU to clear the block most recently used. And then you have to go and edit the libraries, and you can point to multiple libraries, but it will always be creating that metadata for your previews and things like that. I don't believe we have any good information yet on how to control the use of it. It's still fairly new. The library has only been out since 2022, and I'll be honest with you, part of that comes back to your own Autodesk account if you're on named user licenses. I set up my block palette quite some time ago in 22, and when I open up new versions of AutoCAD after I've installed them, it says it can't find a path that I had set way back, and I don't know where to clear that path, and it must be associated as part of my user profile or my Autodesk user profile, so it tries to remember that. So that would be a bigger question, Vaughn. As a matter of fact, that might be a really good one to have for a future webinar. So I will keep an eye on that and see if I can come up with some good documentation. And if I can get a good one, we will make sure we do that. Does AutoCAD 2023 have a content browser or tool catalogs for storing tool palettes? It doesn't really. AutoCAD is the just basic bare bones It doesn't have much for tool palettes other than just storing them local or storing them in the network. If you missed my last webinar, Ricardo, we should get you a link for that because I covered all about tool palettes in basic AutoCAD. MEP has catalogs and things like that where you can associate tool palettes to lock them and have them either get updated or things like that whenever you use it. Let's see. What's the variable for the input delay that drives me crazy? David Sakota. All right. It's minus input search options. That will, you can find it there. That's command line in your options themselves. What is it? Input search options here will actually open up a dialog box. You can get to this from the options, but I'm not sure where it is. And you want to change the suggestion list delay time here. I change mine usually to at least a second, unless I know I'm going to be doing heavy duty CAD work, and then I change it to like 3. I'm a very type oriented CAD user. Again, I've been around for a long time, so if you ever look at the left-hand side of my keyboard, those keys are very shiny compared to the right-hand side. Those of you that laugh know exactly what I'm talking about, where you spend most of your time on the left-hand side of your keyboard and then your right hand is on your mouse. So I actually have a wear spot on the left side of my spacebar. So let's see, when converting DGN to DWG, I end up with unknown faults called DGN1. I've not been able to find them on the web. Do you have them and where did you get them? Brian, that's going to be more of, you're going to end up with a lot of those from DGN. So what I generally do is that if you have those, go into your DD style, your text style, and then basically strip out whatever it's looking for and put in something that is on your system. FYI, text all caps doesn't work on the tool palettes. Hatches and fills while on, still types in lowercase if the caps is off. That's correct, Isaac. It is the text all caps is only for text and mText. Text and mText only. Yes, toolbar was in the view pull down at the bottom of the list, but that brings up the customized toolbar. So if I go to, this is not my workspace. Hang on, let's go back to this. Right, if we go to view, toolbars, that brings this up. All right, missing tool space question. Hang on, I think I missed you here. Hang on, Thomas, let me see. If I skipped you, I do apologize. See if I can find you, Thomas. All right, let's find you again. Bear with me. I gotta find your question again, Thomas. It jumped right past me, so bear with me. Fine, I'm just gonna sort it this way. Let's see. Missing tool space after changing workspace in Civil 3D. So you're missing the tool space button. So when you're in Civil 3D and your tool space disappears after you change a workspace, so you probably changed it to either planning and analysis or drafting and annotation or 3D, and then you go back to the Civil 3D one and it's missing. That might be something that we would have to look at updates. Depending on what version you're on, you may be missing an update for that. I know that there was some problems with tool space in Civil 3D 2022 that have been corrected. The other thing that we may have to do is you may end up having a corrupt profile. What I would typically do at that point is reset your settings back to the default in Civil 3D and see if the behavior continues. It's actually pretty common when things go wrong in Civil 3D, AutoCAD, things like that, is that your information that you have in here is stored in both the registry and your local user profile. If anything goes wrong, and what I typically see is if I go digging deep enough, is that your registry entries, instead of being plain text, get converted to hexadecimal. Once they've been converted to hexadecimal, it reads correctly in Civil 3D, but some of the commands don't know how to interpret that information correctly. And so usually what I will do is I will have to come in here. I will go down to Civil 3D 2022 or 2023, and there's a reset settings to default. I would probably reset the settings, see if the behavior continues, make sure I've got all my updates. All right. So edit nested block properties. If you have nested block properties and you have attributes inside nested blocks, you're going to have to pull them all across. Let's see, viewRes doesn't seem to be a system variable. It is absolutely not a system variable. viewRes is a drawing variable. So you need to set that in your template. And we can actually see that in Express Tools, system variables. See, and viewRes doesn't even show up here. Star VIE. VIEWR. Yep, see, viewRes doesn't even show up here as a system variable, so it's not a system variable. It's probably a drawing variable if you don't see it anywhere. You want fast zooms, yes. The other place viewRes could end up being is it might be a registry entry that's not being updated correctly. Depending on how your profile is set up, that may be something we would need to look at there as well. When the text editor is active, you can highlight the text, then right mouse click and change text. That is correct. So if I am in here, I can highlight this piece of text, I can right mouse click, and I can change text. Right, I can change case inside of here, but I can only toggle upper or lower. With the Express Tools T case, you'll see that I have the ability to change to sentence, lower, upper, title case, toggle case. Beirut, I am not currently planning to be at Autodesk University in September. Let's see, are you familiar with drawing output in Advanced Steel? When I send drawings from the document manager to batch explode, dimensions are also exploded. Robert, I don't normally work in Advanced Steel. That would be a question that we should probably hand over to our Advanced Steel people. They might have an answer for that. Let's see, tool space does not reappear when changing workspaces. Yes, we'll try the default profile and rebuild. What's the difference between plain AutoCAD and say AutoCAD Electrical? Now that is an excellent question. So plain AutoCAD, this is the most generic form of your drafting tools. Okay, as a good example of this is just generic AutoCAD, which means we don't have any built-ins or any helpers. We get into something like, let's talk about, I actually even have electrical as an example. So when we launch electrical, you're going to see that we have a completely different workspace and we have completely different parameters and variables we can work with. Okay. I figured that was going to happen. Sorry, there's a problem with electrical and the MS Access database. So we can probably tackle this using just mechanical then. I'll open up my mechanical and this will kind of give you an idea. Harold Soriano, do you know of an alternative way to change or update tool palette images instead of right mouse click method? That is maybe. If you go back to my webinar that I did all about tool palettes, you can actually go into the tool palettes and modify paths, and you can also specify different images just by using a standard text editor if you have it. If you've actually updated the blocks themselves that you have in your tool palette, you do have to right mouse click and update image. So here is my AutoCAD mechanical. I'm going to go into the mechanical workspace here, and you're going to see in my mechanical I have different things than I would normally have inside of, and actually, what do you want to bet? I'm going to go to my structure. So in here, I have tools. So I have my mechanical browser where I can actually browse to specific tools to get the job done. You're going to see I have construction lines here, and I have content. So I have content libraries, content manager. This is where I have screw connections, through holes, shaft generators. I can do FEA, so I can do some finite element analysis in mechanical that I don't have the ability to do in plain AutoCAD. I also have steel shapes. So when I click on steel shapes, it's going to say what kind of steel shape do I want. So let's go down to one of my favorites. If they should have it in here, which is a wide flange I-beam, right? So we go in here, and we're going to go to an LH shape, and we can go ANSI W. So these are my wide flange I-beams, and you'll see I can actually specify and do all of that. Just in mechanical, has steel shapes and things like that. So electrical is going to be the same way. Electrical is primarily used for doing things like panel layouts, schematics, one-line diagrams, things like that. So that would be the best place to get you started with, Ricardo. Is there a system variable chart for AutoCAD LT for Mac? There is not, but you can find one in the help. Generally speaking, if I go to my help screen, it's going to come up with something like this, and you'll see that you have system variables here, and you will see all of the system variables listed alphabetically. So here's my number sign system variables, tool palette path, PK serve, vernum. Here's my 3D conversion mode. Here's my gallery view. These are all system variables, and if there's something that's a drawing variable, it may or may not appear here. There would be another place to look for those. All right, we are almost out of time. I got a chance for one more question. Let's handle Brian Sawyer. How can I send a CAD file from AutoCAD architecture to someone using vanilla AutoCAD? Will they be able to see the AEC objects? Absolutely. Couple of things. AutoCAD architecture object enabler used to not be built into the AutoCAD core product. It is now actually installed with AutoCAD core. So architecture and MEP drawings should be able to be open and used by any AutoCAD based product. So Map 3D, Civil 3D without any other issues. Civil 3D is its own animal, Plant 3D is its own animal. Those, if you're doing Civil 3D and sending drawings to someone with basic AutoCAD, they're going to need the Civil 3D object enabler. If you're doing Plant 3D and you're sending Plant 3Ds to somebody who does not have Plant 3D or is using it, they have to install the Plant 3D object enabler. Then they would be able to see the objects but not manipulate them. If somebody needs to be able to actually modify some of your architecture stuff, Brian, you may need to do an export to AutoCAD to explode everything down to basic AutoCAD entities, lines, arcs, and circles. Is there a way to search for a folder within AutoCAD in the open dialog box? Greg, I would not go about that because you'll just end up locking up AutoCAD as it goes through the search. Can you tell me how to get parallel lines? Yeah, you've got a no snap for that. And I think I covered that one at one point. So I'm going to draw a line from here to here. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit my parallel O snap. I'm going to turn off my other ones. And this will be my last question. So when I draw a line, I start here. I come here and grab the parallel. And as soon as I hit the parallel, you'll see my tracking line get up. And now that's perfectly parallel line. I could also do other things. I could use the offset command. So from home, I can do offset. here. I can pick a distance from here to here, and I can offset this. That's perfectly parallel line. Those are the two easiest ways to get parallel lines, either the parallel O-snap or using offset. All right, well, you guys have been great. You've had a lot of good questions. What I will do is I will go ahead and say, have a great day, everyone. We did run a little bit over. If you have any other questions, all right, let me just move this over here. So if you have any other questions, email Lori at lelliott@rand.com. Just email her your questions or things like that. If I think it's worthy, it will end up in a webinar. I have another one coming up in November. You guys, since you've registered for this one, will all get emails there. And of course, I forgot to change this slide because I forgot what day it was. You can always go to resources@imaginit.com and you will see all of our resources there. If you email Lori, she can give you an area where I have all my previous webinars as well, so you can peruse through those. Plus, the resources.imaginit.com will also give you a lot of our technical blogs and some of that information. So with that, everyone, you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for your time.